Welcome back, everyone, to episode 66 of the Minot Business Podcast presented by Bennett Creative Media. Clearly, I am not Easton Bennett, and for very good reason. Unfortunately, Easton Bennett could not be sitting in this chair today because Easton Bennett is sitting in that chair. I'm your host today, Jonah Lantto, and my guest is the one and only Easton Bennett. What's up, dude? How's it feel to be on your own show?
Feels really weird sitting on this side of the table. I'm not going to lie to you. For the people that are listening, they're probably like, what is going on here? But for the people that are watching, you probably noticed it right away.
It's like putting your shoe on backwards or something. Like, what's happening here? Am I doing this right? Is my shirt inside out?
Yeah. My pants are on backwards right now just to make sure that the episode goes how it should.
I'm not wearing any pants, so like everything's good.
Everything's waist up.
No, it's like we're those TV people, right?
Yeah.
But hey, it's really cool to be here, and I thought it was neat how it worked out. You know, I was talking. I called you for some other reason, and I had this idea, and I was like, dude, your podcast is really good, and I was like, I am so impressed and blown away by what you've accomplished in just a handful of years in Minot, in your field. I was like, dude, you need to be a guest on your podcast. And if you want someone to be the host, I could do that. And that was crazy because you were like, Jonah, I've been wondering how I could do this. And I didn't just want to sit there and talk into a camera for half an hour.
Yeah. I didn't want to bore the people and just stare into the own camera in this room by myself. And I also didn't want to go into it, selfishly being like, oh, listen to me because you guys have to listen to me every single week. But when Jonah presented the opportunity, he said, it's not weird. You have a business. Showcase the business. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah, you have a business, and let's start with how your business started. I recall meeting you through Adam Dias. You were really green. You were a young kid with a camera. I thought you were like a college intern. Then I learned you hadn't even gone to college for any of this. So where does your journey begin, Easton Bennett?
Yeah, so I do have to give some props to Adam, who I think was episode 2 or episode 3, maybe one of the first guests on here. So props to Adam. He kind of taught me the video world when I started in Minot. But yeah, I was very naive at the beginning. I thought, let's just start a business and run with it and see where we go. But I was up in Canada playing hockey for 2 years. And when I moved back to Minot, my parents said, hey, you should go to Minot State and you should go in the business department. And I didn't really want to go back to school because I didn't want to pay for it. If it would have been free, I definitely would have went, but I didn't want to pay for it.
Okay, it's important to note.
Yeah, so like that was kind of the big thing. And I always tell people like I didn't go to college, but I would have. It's just I didn't really want to pay for it because I'm stingy with my money a little bit. So I was naive and I thought I can just start this business. It can't be that hard. Look how many businesses are out there. So I started a business. I was still living in my parents' basement, and I pretty much told them I was 20 at the time. And usually people graduate from college at 22. I said, give me the 2 years that you would have allotted me for the college. And if I don't have my shit together by then I'll go back to college. And it ended up working out.
Yeah, it sounds like you offered your parents a pretty fair deal. They were receptive. And I think it's great that you were young with ambition. And there seems sometimes to be a singular direction. Oftentimes you were playing hockey. Maybe you thought you were going to be a hockey player. And then you're like, well, everybody goes to college. I need a degree. I'm sure at some point you've seen the numbers of financial earnings over time of degree versus not degree. It's notable. It's almost $1 million.
And that's the thing where I always tell people this if they're deciding whether or not to go to college. I didn't go to college because, for those of you that don't know, I run a video production company. So it's in the creative field. And I don't think you necessarily need a degree if you're going into a creative field. But I always tell people if you're going to be a dentist or a doctor, please go to college. So when I come see you, you're not messing up my teeth or, botching my surgery or anything. So I'm an advocate for college, but I think you have a little bit more wiggle room on those creative fields. Whereas I didn't really want to go to school because I was a little bit not nervous to go to like the classes, but I knew everyone had already been doing it. I would be going in there as a 20-year-old with 2 years off from school.
The old guy in college.
The old freshman. So I was like, maybe I'll just somehow figure out how not to do that. I decided not to, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. That's for sure.
It's certainly not easy, but sometimes the most difficult thing is taking that first step and being bold enough to give something a try. And that start. Why video production? Did you have some pre-existing skill set? You got a camera for Christmas one year and just figured, hey, let me try this out. What pulled you in that direction?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story. When I was up in Canada, I wanted to start, or I did attempt to start a show, kind of like Jimmy Fallon, with my teammates. So I sat at my billet parents' dining room table, didn't know anything about cameras or lighting or audio. I actually took my parents' camera, came back to Minot for like Thanksgiving.
Parents had like a camcorder or something like that?
Yep, they had a Canon T3i, man. It didn't even have autofocus. It was so shitty, but I was like, this isn't bad. I'll use this. So brought it up there, started the show. I think we did 4 episodes, and we would just do random segments. Like one, we'd just play Jenga and talk in the middle of it. Another one was a debate between LeBron versus Jordan. Then we talked about like the Sanford medical experiment. I don't know if you've heard of that, where one summer they put a bunch of people in prison.
School. They made some people prisoners, and they made some people the guards. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we started this show, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. But I knew that was going to take a tremendous amount of time to actually get going. So when I moved back to Minot, I thought, let's just do this. The main driving factor is I also didn't want to work for anybody. Really bad at kind of like taking orders, like being under a boss. So I was
but you're not a bad collaborator at all.
No. And that's where I more so lean towards the partnership collaboration side of things, where I feel like everyone's moving, where I didn't like the fact of doing a piece of work because someone is making me do it or telling me to do it. Where I'd rather, me and Jonah work on a project. I'd rather both of us come together to accomplish that project.
Sure.
Rather than, a boss being like, you have to do this. And it's not like I ever had any bad experiences with bosses. I had one job in my whole life. I was a cart boy at the Minot Country Club. So I'd wash people's clubs and they'd tip me, and it was good. Easy money, easy job. But yeah, I just didn't really like the whole thought of having to wake up, being there at a set time. So like, oh, you have to be here at 6 a.m. because
the alarm's ringing.
Yeah. And that's the nice part about running a business, not just a video business, but any business. You have flexibility in your schedule to kind of do whatever you need to. So when I moved back, decided let's run with this video production idea. I knew nothing about video production. I just really liked movies, TV shows, kind of a snob, just like yourself, Jonah. You're into the TV world.
I'm big into TV series for sure. We could do a whole separate episode on that.
So so I moved back and I was like, let's do video. I ended up shooting a video for my uncle who owns a business here in town. And I thought it was the greatest video ever. Look back on it now, literally the worst video on earth. I don't know why you ever even let me in the building. But ever since then, I was gung-ho and I was like, let's go into video. But yeah, I really went in knowing nothing. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get that first video job? And when you decided to make that start, okay, I'm starting my own business, but where did you really start? That's the step, right? But what were the action items that you took in those first couple of years? And then when you felt like you knew what you were doing, what were your next action items after that?
Yeah. So actually, when I did that video for my uncle, it was in between. So I played 2 years in Canada. It was in between the first and second year. So I came back for the summer and I was like, oh, let's do some video. So I shot that. And then I realized that I really enjoyed doing this. So when I went back up to Canada that whole next year, I watched, I think, every single video on YouTube on lighting, on how to film, on all the different gear. And I just made a bunch of YouTube videos.
Research, and more research and different opinions and looking at equipment and listening. It blows me away how many videos you have watched, but that's what it takes.
YouTube University. That's what I tell people. I literally learned everything from YouTube, and Adam Dice. He got me started too.
Yeah. Certainly you had maybe a bit of a tutor.
Yeah.
But to access those resources that are right there for anyone, it works, again, as you said, in that creative field.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, I don't really like the saying where it's like, do something you love and you'll never work your day in your life. It is true, but then I think people lean on that too heavily. But it's much easier to go through the process. I really like the video process. So watching the videos was whatever. It's just like if someone was to go watch Netflix, that was my Netflix. So just learning about videos and like, oh, look how cool they did this shot, or oh, this is how you do slow motion video. That was like me watching Netflix or someone else watching Netflix, like a Breaking Bad. So yeah, it is nice when you enjoy the actual process. So it makes it feel a lot easier.
So the action items I'm hearing: step 1, okay, I'm launching a business, I'm doing video. Step 2, I need to know and learn everything I absolutely can about video.
Yeah.
And you did that through YouTube mostly. And then sounds like you learned quite a bit from Adam Dice. In summary, that's where we're at.
I thought I was going to be a YouTube star. All the videos on the YouTube now you can't see, they're unlisted. But if you guys
didn't delete them, right? They're still out there.
Yeah. So if you guys
Good.
sweet talk me, you can message the podcast and I'll maybe share some links with you.
Oh, I bet those are gems.
I'm missing a tooth in most of them. So that's what's fun about it. I lost a tooth like 8 games into my first year. So all my YouTube videos, I'm missing a tooth.
Okay, Shorzy. Like that
Exactly.
makes perfect sense. And what did you, after you felt like you had learned some skills, you felt more competent, more confident in what you were doing, then what? You start calling people, you start beating on doors and saying, hey, I'm a video guy now. I've got equipment. Let me come shoot something for you. Is that how it worked?
100%. So it was basically, I'll shoot this for you for free. Another person that I think gave me a chance in the start was Kurt Gus at Elite Real Estate. I messaged him and said, hey, can I just shoot a free video for you? And he said, sure. We went and shot the free video. They actually ended up giving me like a prepaid visa, like as like a thank you.
Okay.
And I never asked them for it. So
nice little spiff there.
Exactly. Yeah. A little bit of money for doing your work. So that was the first one. And then the summer when I moved back, I was super gung ho and thought I was really good, which actually helped me. And I decided to do a documentary on the Minot Vistas, the baseball team that I used to play for. So I obviously knew the coach. I played for him a couple years prior, and I said, hey, can I just follow you guys around for the summer? I'll make this documentary for you. Maybe
you're still in your parents' basement at this time.
Correct. Yep. Yes. I was like 4-part series. I'll make 4 episodes, and then we'll just come up with, the beginning will be the formation of the team, and then we'll do the midseason struggles, and then we'll do the tournament and the state tournament. I actually didn't finish the last episode of it because they did so horribly at the state tournament that there was like no content. But in the middle of that process of creating this documentary, I remember going to KMOT when Nick Holberg was working there. And I said, hey, I don't have a music subscription license. Like I can't download music and put it on YouTube or I get a copyright strike. Can I use your guys' service? And he's like, yeah, no problem at all. So I went to KMOT, scrolling through some music, and his boss or someone higher up came in and they saw us watching the video and they're like, who made this video? And I was like, well, I made this video. I'm following the team around. And then they're like, do you want a job? I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So offered me a job. They said, we'll do a video interview next week. And I ended up missing the interview. It went to my spam. And I emailed the guy and I'm like, hey, I never got anything from you. And he's like, oh, well, we sent you an email and you didn't answer. So we already filled the position.
Peace.
And I was like, oh, that's crazy. So I mean, blessing in disguise. I think getting a job so early on in the journey would have hindered the growth, but it was good to see that someone in the industry and someone a little bit higher up noticed the work was quality enough to.
You felt seen right there.
Yeah.
You felt like, okay, maybe
felt like I was on the right path.
Maybe I'm doing things right. That was the universe sending you a sign. And speaking of signs, if you're looking for a good deal, more reliable internet, or a more forward-thinking tech partner for your business, Midco has you covered. They're making it easier than ever to make the switch to Midco. Sign up for services before December 31st, and you'll receive free professional installation. That's a $499 value. You can schedule installation at the time that's most convenient for you and your business. Plus, Midco's team of experts will not only set up your services, but set up your team for success by showing the ins and outs of your new connection. From gig speeds to VoIP phone services, get everything you need to help your business thrive. Visit midco.com/business/free install. This limited time offer is for new customers only.
That was a great transition, Jonah. That was really good. That was a lot better than I usually do. Usually I'm just a hard cut on the podcast. That was perfect.
Easton, let's jump right on back in. Thanks again to Midco for jumping on board with your podcast. I was kind of curious. I know we've been talking a little bit about your journey and the actionable steps, and I think it's really important. Sometimes when people are telling these stories, they don't, it's broad, all the broad strokes. And I like getting into the details and giving people, what are these action items? What are the steps really look like? And we've gone over some of that, but I'm really curious, aside from your love for movies and series, why you chose this market. Was that really the only driving force?
I mean, it helped. I think it was, when the stars align and things just happen to work, and then you look back on it and you're like, oh, it makes sense why I did it that way. Sure. So that's how I look back. And one, I really like movies. That's what actually got me to pick up a camera and start doing stuff. And then as I started doing it, I realized that some of the content being created in the area Minot being a smaller town, there wasn't a ton of people in the video industry. Like I said, Adam's here for sure.
Yep.
The Indac crew, Matt and Eric, they were doing some stuff, but those are really the only people I knew. Obviously, there were some companies in Bismarck and Fargo that were a little bit bigger.
And you get the KX stations and stuff like that, but there was not a lot of independent filmmakers or independent commercial makers here.
Yeah, and that's the tough part about the news stations is they have so many people they have to deal with that it's hard to put so much time and effort into just one.
Of course.
Whereas that's the gap in the market that I thought I could maybe fill is that, I could take less clients and just work way more in depth with them rather than, hey, we got an hour to shoot this commercial and then we got to have it on next week. Whereas I thought I could bring in the process of let's really dive in and try to create Super Bowl ads. That's kind of how I went into it.
Sure.
You see the Super Bowl, these crazy ads.
Higher production. You want creativity.
Yep.
You want original scripts. Did you immediately identify this gap in the market, or is that something that you became a little bit more aware of in the process of those first couple of years?
More aware of, for sure. And that's where, looking back on it, it's kind of like the stars aligned, where I look back and I'm like, there was a gap there that I didn't really see when I started. It's not like, oh my God, there's this gap, I'm going to fill it and this business is going to be great. Like you see some people, like if people that started Uber, that's a gap in the market. They saw right away. They're like, let's fill it. Whereas this was more so, everything's hindsight's 2020, where I saw it and I was like, oh, there was a gap there. That's maybe how this was working a little bit better.
It still doesn't cease to, I guess, impress me that this is all coming together for you at a very young age. By now you're about 22 years old into this process. You're starting, you've got your own camera. You're starting to get jobs. You got the Vistas gig. It didn't work out. Mm-hmm. How did you get work?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the Vistas gig didn't work out. I think it was, you mean the job
the KX gig.
Yes.
Yeah. The KX gig. Yeah.
Yeah. So how I got work, it's actually funny. I've spoken to a few high school classrooms for some business teachers, just telling my story. And I always tell them the first year, I think I made $8,000.
But you're in your parents' basement, so there's no pressure. There's no stress. And I think that's an important thing to emphasize for anybody younger or in a position to capitalize on what their dreams might be, to start building them. Use those moments. If you don't be in a rush to take on debt, don't be in a rush to take on loans, or maybe get out of the house right away. Like you can, the building blocks are there for a lot of people.
Oh yeah. And that's what I told myself. I'm like, all I have to do is cover my car payment. I'm not paying my parents' rent. There's no way I'm doing that. They're not charging me for my phone. I'm still eating their food. So it's like, I got to cover paying for my car every month, which was like, I don't know, $250, something like that. So I was super happy. I was like, I got a lot of time to do this. I told them, I gave them a 2-year window, but I always told the high school students, made $8,000 the first year. It was probably like, 8 or 9 months, not full 12 months. But I told them after the first year, I was like, wow, I don't know how this is ever going to work. Like, this is ridiculous. So going back to your question, how I was getting clients is, in the beginning, I was reaching out to people. Hey, I'll shoot this free video for you, and meeting with them. I knew nothing about meeting with people either. So a few of the first meetings that I met with people, I would tell them like, hey, I'll do this. And I just didn't know how to communicate. So they're like, this is ridiculous. This guy doesn't really know what he's doing. So
looking really green in those meetings, and maybe not understanding the full capacity of like facilitating interpersonal. Okay. So
it was really in again, looking back on it, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I was like, okay, I understand why they were a little bit hesitant to be like, yeah, let's do this. So then I didn't really do any advertising, any, reaching out to people like here and there. I'd be like, oh, let me shoot this free project for you. And these smaller jobs would come up here and there, but nothing that's going to change your life. And this whole time I was creating what I call spec ads. You're just making them.
I think I filmed one or two with you.
Yeah. There's no client. You're just making it for a portfolio piece. And I just kept trying to build up that portfolio to do as much as I could. And then at the beginning of that second year, I think Minot High, the high school, wanted to bring me on to film a bunch of different classes. So they have like a registration guide.
Sure.
And usually you can read the description about the class, but they're like, it'd be cool if people could scan it, watch a video about what the class is about, rather than having to read a description.
Sure.
So we did a ton of videos. And for them...
And this was a hired job.
Correct. And for them, it was awesome, because if you look at it per video, what they were paying, minuscule. But we did so many that I saw the dollar figure at the end, and I was like, this is awesome. I can't believe someone's paying me this much money.
Sure.
So it's a win-win on both sides. And that was the first time that I really had like a client per se that I was pumped about.
Your first real big job. And I think important to note through this, you were refining your skill set, making the spec ads, offering to do some free gigs. And of course, not every business can exercise those options. If you're starting a restaurant, you can maybe offer everybody like one free dinner or something, right? Hey, come check this out. This one's on me. But that's it. You can't continuously keep doing that. But in that creative space, you had that time to build and develop your skills to a point where you got your first big hired client. Now you've got a portfolio. Your interpersonal skills are probably developing a little bit more. You're getting a little bit better at the communication piece.
And I think that was just being young for sure.
Being young. And I think sometimes people overlook the communication aspect. I had a chance to engage with some really high level cybersecurity tech people. And I asked them, well, what's one of your biggest fears of the future of this industry? And they said, one of our biggest fears of the future of this industry is lack of interpersonal communication skills between the people who are becoming cybersecurity agents and the higher ups. So like and I'm like, wow. So it's not the technology itself, it's the lack of skills in the people that you're seeing come forward.
And I think that was one of the things. It was probably hard for people to digest. I'm going in there and meeting with these older business owners, and then a 20-year-old kid walks in
with a camera.
Thinks he's hot shit. And you go in there like, I can do this for you, this for you, this for you. And I think the one thing going into it, I always thought was, one, try to do it differently. Create content that they probably haven't seen in this area. So the standard locked off tripod shots, a lot of people are used to that, talking right to camera. So I was like, how can we switch things up? So I was trying to do different transitions I saw on YouTube and different shot styles. And then the other thing was I was taking a lot of behind the scenes photos. So, stuff that looked like I was a video guy, So I was posting those and be like, great job working on a job today with so-and-so. Job was free. Had someone, I set my phone up and maybe took a picture of it.
Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that's a free job.
Exactly. So I was posting it, and then I knew in the back of my mind, this is something I did know going into it. The more I post about it and talk about it, the more people are going to believe that that's what it is. So if I'm like, oh, look at this awesome project we shot because I'm a video guy, and then people will see it and be like, oh, he does video. So eventually it'll come around. But I knew that was going to take a lot of building blocks to get it out there and to keep making these posts. It was a ton of posts and they didn't ever get any likes or shares or views or anything. But I was like, eventually it'll work out.
It will become visible. And clearly it has worked out, even if it was slowly. So when push came to shove 2 years in and your parents like, all right, Easton, we gave you the 2 years. Where were you at right there at the end of that deadline that you had set and gave your parents? Were you stable?
Yeah, I think I was definitely milking it. I was like, well, they're giving me 2 years. I'm taking advantage of the full 2 years.
Sure.
So I actually created a spec ad. It was a car commercial with one of my buddies. Probably my favorite spec ad at the time. I was like, can't believe we created this. Like, it looks legit. The coloring on it's awesome. Whereas some of my previous videos where you can tell this is done by someone that's just starting their business or whatever. But that one, I was like, this could pass as someone that knows what they're doing,
sure.
Right? In that one car ad, got me a phone call with a car dealership, and we did a contract for 2 years. That was a pretty big contract that kind of solidified that I was stable enough to do my own thing. So that was right before the 2 year deadline, and we started doing that, and it was awesome. But yeah, just that one spec ad, which goes back to, if you're creating the work that you want to be paid for, it's kind of like dress for the job you want, Of course. If you're creating the work you want to be paid for, eventually someone's going to see it. If I want to do car commercials, I start doing some spec car ads. I got a call from a car dealership. So that was kind of the catalyst into doing video. And we were doing so many videos a month that it really helped me sharpen my skills.
Of course.
And then at that point, my parents didn't kick me out, but we mutually agreed that I could leave, and I moved about 8 or 9 houses away from them. So
we mutually agreed that I could leave. When you hit that stability point, and what an amazing comfort, pat yourself on the back over, right? Like, holy crap, I did it.
Yeah.
This is happening. I'm a guy. And then you start getting more calls. Then clients start coming to you at that point. And this is now, what year of your business are you in now?
It's probably the second and a half to third year.
Second and a half to third year.
Yeah.
Counting the first 2 years with your parents.
Yes. So I was probably 22. Actually probably towards the end of when I was still in my parents' house.
Okay.
I was working on, I definitely remember that because I remember I'd come home from the shoot and I'd lug all my duffel bags of junk downstairs and set them on the shelves I put in my bedroom. But it was probably in that transition period from the end of when I was at my parents to then moving into my own place.
From my perspective, and Easton and I are friends and colleagues, but we're not like, hey, call each other on the weekend, let's go out and hang out all the time. Yeah. So, you were more at arm's length, and it was just really interesting for me to watch your growth because I met you, and Easton and Adam Dias is like, well, I got this young kid, he's really green. I feel like we had wanted to send you to Atypical to shoot some stuff, and then they wouldn't even let you in because you weren't even 21.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? And just from my perspective, it seemed like you exploded. It not in a way where it was unearned, but in a way that's like, holy cow. Like he's really becoming a name, and it seemed like every 6 months, because I'm paying attention. I'm like, holy, he's got all these. Look at this new equipment he's getting.
Yeah,
wow.
I spent every dollar I made on new equipment.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm stable, but I'm gonna make sure I'm not. I'm gonna keep buying stuff.
That's why I was like, Jesus, this guy's always buying new gear. How's he doing it? What's going on?
Yeah, just being unresponsible is mainly the main reason for it. And I remember that Atypical job. They had like a metal grate, and I had to stand outside of it with like a telephoto lens.
Yeah, like I was just trying to get these shots. Like no, it was hard for that to work out. But it was wild for me to see what seemed like exponential growth. Did it feel like it was exponential growth?
Oh no, man! It felt like I was faking it 100%, and I was. Like I remember posting. There's one video I made in my bedroom at my parents' house, and it was like, we're looking for actors. We're looking to hire actors for shoots. And I'm like, looking back on it now, I was like, what was I going to pay them? How was I going to do that?
What was I going to hire them?
Yeah. I'm like, I didn't even have jobs for them to work on. I just wanted some people thinking I was looking for some people. But every post I made, it's so funny. Like you can tell some of them are like set up against the coffee cup, and like, I'm like, faking looking like I'm working. So I was definitely faking it until I made it, and it worked. Obviously I was getting the name out there and I was excited about that. But in my head the whole time, I'm like, these posts I can't believe I'm just like lying to these people. And it's not like I was lying to them, but it felt like it.
Sure.
Like I was like, I'm this big video guy.
You dealt with imposter syndrome.
Oh, 100%.
Which
100%.
is so prevalent in entrepreneurs. It really is. It's like, wow, am I real? Am I this good? I don't have a degree. And it's all these questions that pepper your mind that want to give you doubt, and still you push on.
Yeah.
And eventually you were able to buy a house. You became a homeowner through this.
I have to thank 2011 floods for that.
It happens. Right. But then as I'm watching, I'm like, okay, equipment. Then all of a sudden, man, you've got an equipment truck.
Yeah. Grip van.
You've got the grip van. You've got Bennett Creative Media on the side of it. Like what a moment.
Yeah. It was super exciting. I remember when I got the van, it was super exciting, but I have to attribute that to all the people that gave me a chance. So I was super, and if you're listening to this, you know who you are. Thank you for believing me after watching those shit videos in the beginning. But it was just slowly, I didn't spend a ton of money. I wasn't going on crazy amount of trips, and I wasn't trying to do a bunch of fun stuff, going out all the time. I just wanted to build this video thing so people believed me. One, so I didn't have to get a job. I was so terrified of like, now that I started this,
please don't make me clock in anywhere. Please don't make me clock in anywhere.
It was more so like I had told the world, I was posting on Facebook and everywhere and Instagram, telling people I started this video business, that I didn't want to have to put my tail between my legs
and choke that down
and be like, I'm going to go, now I work here. You know what I mean? Because then people would be asking me, oh, what happened? What happened? Why did that happen?
I'm going to have to tell everybody what happened for the next year.
Exactly. And I just went to lunch yesterday at Don Tapatio. By the way, great restaurant. Fantastic food.
Went the other night. Good stuff.
Awesome. So I went and ate there, and my buddy who lives in Houston now, he's like, oh, so do you think you're going to do like video for the next couple of years, or is this like a long-term thing? And I'm like, well, probably do it forever. Like that's the thing.
This is my life.
Yeah.
This is what I do now.
But I remember at the time, I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to fail, because I will not go through the whole process of having to tell people why I failed, why I had to get a real job. So anytime that my back was against the wall, I just somehow figured it out. a job landed in my lap or it fell on my plate or whatever it might be. And a lot of it comes from luck, but I do believe you create your own luck. So
you do create your own luck. And there's something that I'm hearing here is twofold. One, you were very willing to live frugally.
Oh yeah.
You were willing and able. Not everybody's able to do that. So that the situations are always different, but you were willing to embrace, hey man, I'm not going to have the next pair of shoes. I'm not dining out. I'm not going on vacations. I am scraping by, and what extra money I do have, I want to and put it back into my business. It sounds like you were taking those early dollars, reinvesting them back into your business, putting more time into, like I asked Easton one time, how many lighting videos have you watched on YouTube? And his answer was all of them.
Probably twice, all of them twice. Yeah. But yeah, that's, you're right. I mean, I was super fortunate to not have any kids at a young age. I didn't have a girlfriend. A lot of my friends were gone at college.
Best piece of advice that's come from this podcast yet. Don't have kids at a young age.
Yeah.
Wait, what? No.
But yeah, so it's like I had total freedom. Yeah. You know, I could do whatever, whenever. All my friends were at college. They were playing sports. So it's not like I could hang out with them a ton. I hung out when they were back and the people that were here, but it did align where I had a lot of extra time to just dive into everything video. So that's what I did. And
second piece of that for me, and this is just maybe me and my preference with words, but people say, well, chase your dreams. That's cute.
Yeah.
But you can be chasing something forever, baby. Yeah. You got to build your dreams.
Oh yeah.
And you built that shit.
And I think it comes from the one turning point, the transition of when I realized like, okay, this is working, but it's not really like blowing up, is I was focusing so much on the passion, the creative side of things, whereas I didn't learn much of the business side of things.
Sure.
So like you mentioned, the interpersonal connection, the communication. The
business side is tough for creatives sometimes.
Oh my gosh, I know. And it's not like I'm this big creative person that's, I'm not painting or doing drawings or anything. Like I'm just shooting video. Anyone can learn how to shoot video. You might have to have an eye for it, but the business side, I like talking to people more, which I thought that would have became easier. But once I started to learn, like, businesses run because they have processes. You probably need to have a process that your clients go through rather than just sending a text being like, cool, when can we shoot? Right. So implementing that process. Okay. Now you need to probably implement some, like documents wise, accounting wise, that kind of stuff. Okay. Right. Now you need to implement maybe the sales side. How are you getting new clients rather than just letting them fall in your lap? Once I started to learn and educate myself on the business side, that's when things really picked up.
That is an incredible balance, and again, a key thing to note for aspiring creatives. And I know we're kind of winding down to the end here, Easton, so I want to make sure we get to these last couple of questions. Very important. We've talked a lot about what got you here, but now I'm curious, where are you going to go next? What goals do you have for the future of Bennett Creative Media? Yeah. Besides making a movie with me.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I have so many scripts, and I was telling you about one last week. I think I want to make some movies for sure, even if they're short films and then eventually feature films. And if you guys want to act, let me know, because it's always tough to find actors. I'll post that video that I posted when I was in my parent. We're looking for actors.
Right. But yeah, just reshare that. Just bring it back out.
Exactly. With my missing tooth.
It's real this time.
They thought I lost another tooth. But going back to your question, I think the future, really, I want to create a conglomerate, a big studio here in Minot that is creating social content, creating funnels for people that they can grow their business through content. Whatever content, I always say we shoot everything but weddings. I had some bad experiences with some weddings. If you guys are an avid listener of the show, you know those stories. But we shoot everything from everything except weddings. And I want to build a giant studio where we have people shooting stuff in-house. I'd like this podcast to be in-house. I'd like to produce some podcasts for other people and create this big studio. And then on the flip side of the podcast, I've had the Minot Business Podcast idea since I was in my parents' basement, and I was so worried that someone else was going to start it before I could get a space to do it.
I know that feeling.
Oh man. And I had this logo and everything, which the logo's not great, but it's a little Photoshop action on there, some fake buttons.
Have you ever wore a shirt like that on your show?
I have not. I don't even know if that graphic is high quality enough to put on a t-shirt. But so I had the logo and everything prepped for so long where I wanted to implement this podcast. And one of the things when I started, I knew it'd be a conversation like we're having, but eventually I wanted to get to a point where Maybe it's more so an MTV Cribs type deal where we're going into businesses and we're walking through it, and they can explain how things work while we walk through it and have a conversation. So this is awesome. We can sit here and talk about the business, but it'd be cool if there was a video, maybe a 20-minute long video where I'm walking through a typical brewery and it's like, yeah, we got this woodwork done from so-and-so and we decided to get this space and then we added on the brewery in the back. I think it'd be cool to do a walkthrough like that. So that's the future plans. We could probably do it now, but I just think with the capacity that we're at, we're going to stick with this. But yeah, that's a future plan that I'm really excited about.
Okay, it's good to have plans for the future. That's a big goal. Small interim goals. Any very more small interim goals. I'm a big fan of small attainable goals alongside the big dreams. What small?
Yeah, as far as the podcast goes, I mean, I just want to keep producing weekly episodes. Getting to 100 episodes is going to be exciting. I think
it's a milestone. Yeah,
I think it's what, 66.
Yep.
So we got about 34 more, which will be exciting when we hit that 100 episode mark. And then as far as the business side goes about small attainable goals, just want to keep growing. I want to bring on a full-time team member here. An editor would be good to have. Right now it's just me, and then
next hiring step, you're hoping to hire an editor.
And that's kind of the biggest thing right now is hiring an editor to free up some time. And we have a couple people in the queue, but
okay. And something as an independent creator, you have outsourced work to other freelancers, right? Yeah, to some capacity, you have hired people, not as an employee, but Bennett Creative Media is certainly responsible for hiring and creating work for others beyond yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things now that I'm at this point in the business, I try to rarely ever go into a video shoot by myself anymore. It's just way better when you have more people on set. So, for example, last week we were shooting an ad, the one you acted in actually, Jonah, for Surf Pro. And we had, I think, 4 people on set. It was me shooting the camera. We had an audio guy. We had a grip guy. We had a producer. So really all the shoots I'm doing now, we're bringing a big crew on there. They don't work full time for Bennett Creative Media, but they're the go-to guys that you call that come to the shoot. I think it just adds a way better client experience. The job gets done way better. The commercials look way better. The ads look way better just because there are more eyeballs on it. So that's a point where I'm not really going back from that. Now it's full cruise.
Well, and that's a big point is I've engaged with so many new business owners over the last few years through organizations like Startup Minot and things like that. One of the first critical steps for a lot of people is being able to hire, and whether that's an employee, but someone that can share some of that workload, because at some point you're just one person and there's only so much and when you're one person, that means your sales, you are creation. In your case, you are editing. Yeah. This is so much to be responsible for. And at some point you can't accept new work because you have so much of the workload that you're still trying to manage.
Yeah. 100%. And I got some people that are working on part-time basis, doing the editing, doing the producing, the client communication side of stuff. But I'd like to start having in-house people just because to build that culture, to bring on an editor where they feel like they have a hand in the projects, like they're actually accomplishing something.
They have some agency in the creation of what's being filmed.
And they get some, it's their piece. Whereas if I just outsource and I say, edit this, they send it back to me and then I don't talk to them for another month and a half. It doesn't feel like you have that connection. So right now, it's editor. That'll free up some time for me to do more sales work and actually working on the business rather than in it. Because like you said, the busier you get when you're doing sales and marketing and editing and shooting and client communication, it gets to be a lot.
Okay. And I know a big part of the Minot Business Podcast is getting from the business owners, of course, 4 pieces of business advice. And that's what we're going to end on. But I guess I want to... You can include this as pieces of your advice or not, but I want to know from you, what resources have you used that anybody can use? And because I've learned from you, I learned about Opus from you, and heck, I didn't use Chat GPT until after I had talked to you, and I found ways in which Chat GPT can help me, and I would love to hear, beyond whatever 4 pieces of business advice you have, really of these specific little resources that are out there that people who are in your field might be overlooking, because some of us are old guys.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to be your dad. It's
crazy.
It is. It never ceases to amaze me again, because I am just, dude, I'm proud to see how far you've come in the time that you have come. And it just blows me away. And it's cool that I feel like I've taught you some things. You've come to me to get some advice at time, but I've learned a lot from you too. And maybe I haven't told you that. So just so you know, holy cow.
Well, thank you, Jonah.
Yeah, man, you're totally welcome. So what are those resources and your 4 pieces of advice?
So I'll tie the resources into the first piece of advice. The first piece of advice is to always be educating yourself, whether it's in the actual field or whether it's in the business side of things. Always be learning. And I think the free pieces, the ways you can be learning are, one, YouTube is a great resource. I don't know if you're not using YouTube. It's incredible that you're not.
Maybe not for scientific research, but hey, if you want to fix a laundry machine or a washer and dryer, or you want to learn video editing, and I learned a lot of sound editing through YouTube.
Yeah. And I like YouTube because it's just a video Google. You know, I can Google something like, you know, how can I replace my tire? And I can read a thing on it, or I can watch a guy do it. So I would much rather watch it, where you can do anything. You know, if you just have questions about, you know, maybe it's taxes and you have a question about the Augusta rule, how you can rent out your house for 2 weeks out of the year as a business expense, whatever it might be. You can YouTube, what is the Augusta rule? And someone will explain it to you. Now, obviously you got to maybe fact check it a little bit here and there, but I've used YouTube from everything from videos, which is kind of the main thing, like we talked about earlier, to all of the business questions I have, or anything that really comes up. And then I would say the second, probably the bigger one, is to use real people, whether they're in your network or out of your network. Like you mentioned, Jonah, I've came to you multiple times and just asked you questions. Anyone you know that might know something, ask them questions, because the more feedback you can get from different sources, the better off you're going to be, the more you're going to be able to grow. So that's one of the big things. I'll DM random people on Instagram if I see their story. Half of them probably don't answer, but the times you do get answers, you get really insightful thoughts from people that are maybe above you or where you want to get to.
Okay.
Second piece of advice. You ready for that one?
Yes, but I still want to know what those other cool little resources are. If you've got any others that you want to share, like editing software.
Oh,
or,
yes. Okay.
Or accounting software, or you know, are you using Canva or Hootsuite, or, you know, some those specific.
Okay. So you want some
software
tangible.
packages.
Okay.
Yeah. That's great advice. And that's what I was wanting to hear that.
Yeah.
But what are those specific things that other creators may not have stepped into, or if I'm an aspiring creator, this will help me?
Yeah. So one thing is, and maybe not even talking directly to creators, but business owners as well.
Sure.
If you're looking to do any photo, anything, get the Lightroom and Photoshop package. It's $10 a month. Your business can afford $120 a year. You get Photoshop and you get Lightroom. So Lightroom, you can just make your images look so much better. Just a couple clicks here and there. You don't have to be a full-blown photo editor, but you know, some photos I see, the whole image is really warm. You can click the white balance clicker, click something white in the image, boom,
done.
Your image looks better.
Is that what you did the other day when I was watching what you did on the photos? Like you did something and I was like, holy cow, that looks so much better.
Yep. So you adjust it and then it just and it literally takes 10 seconds. Yes. So you can dive into that as much as you want.
Click. Oh,
yeah. Okay. And then Photoshop, if you guys are not using that, it's $10 a month with the photo editing package, and you can use what's called generative fill. And that's, you know, we talked about this when we were shooting some interviews for the Hoos Fest. We had a wall that was blank. We wanted something on there. In Photoshop, you can pull up a photo, you can circle something and tell it to do whatever you want to do. So I can circle the empty part on the wall and put a picture frame here, or put a poster, and it'll pop it right on screen for you.
Wow.
And then you can click through the options to see what it looks like. So AI, if you guys are sleeping on AI or think it's going to take over the world, instead of looking at it like that, start to find some creative ways to use it. Like you mentioned, ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think people are vastly underestimating how AI can help them. It's not trying to take your phone over. It's not trying to, you know, operate your car for you. This isn't freaking, we're not getting the Terminator here. Okay. So very impressive. Yeah.
And I use it a lot for script writing, ChatGPT. Like, even I have an idea of how I want the commercial to look, or the script of what it looks like. And I'll type the script in my own words, and then I'll just put it in there and say, just refine this a little bit to make it sound a little bit better, you know, more grammatically correct, maybe some better words. So it's not like you have to full blown like remove someone's job, like, oh, write me a book. No, you can just use it to supplement. Yep. So the other thing I'd say, Canva's great for graphic design. And then as far as other software goes, I'm trying to think. Opus Clips is great for getting podcast clips and stuff. We use that for this show. And then
Opus, a game changer.
Oh yeah. It is a monthly fee, but it's worth it. And then, or not a monthly fee. I don't know if you can buy packages, but you guys can look into it. So that's good for clips. And then I think that's probably all the software I'm thinking about. Okay. I'll think of something 10 minutes after this.
That's how it goes. But okay. So back to business advice.
Business advice. So one piece of advice that we just talked about, keep learning, keep, staying educated in your field. The second thing, I think networking is super important. I didn't realize how important relationships were when starting my business. And now it's basically everything. It's
and networking is connecting too. Yeah. Networking sometimes feels a little impersonal.
And I always hated the word networking.
Yeah. And so somebody else I really respect who has done very well for themselves as a human and as a business owner, it has been using connecting in place of networking.
Yeah.
And I like that because I feel like I want to connect to these people who become part of my network.
Yeah. And I hated you have to network. You have to go to networking events and you have to hand people business cards. Like that seems very 2000 and late, like the Black Eyed Peas would say. But I like the more so just creating those relationships, which takes me into my third piece of advice is that be attentive and listen to what the people that you're potentially working with are saying. So for example, I was with a client last week and they gave me something personal in their life that they like. So I can use that later. Maybe it's their birthday. You send them something that they like. That's how you're actually building those relationships where, if they're like, oh, I really like the Vikings. Maybe you send them a picture framed photo of Justin Jefferson that said, hey, happy birthday, whatever it is, right? Just using that as a quick example, but listen to what these people are saying because they're real people. I would hope people do that to me. But, if Jonah tells me something, I know he really likes TV series. So if one day I send him an article that says, hey, here are the top new TV series of 2024, he might like that. It might be a small gesture, but it just shows that you're caring about the other person and it starts to build that relationship a lot quicker than it would if you're just looking at it as a business transaction.
There is deep, profound value in being thoughtful of others. And that's what you're doing right
And
there.
you should just do it even if you don't have a business.
Absolutely. That's not good business advice. That's good human advice. Yeah. Being thoughtful of others, whether they are clients, colleagues, friends, your parents, your family, being thoughtful. When somebody is thoughtful of me, dude, it feels so good.
Oh yeah.
It's like, wow, you saw this article and you thought of me and shared it to me, or this song or this gift. It feels amazing when somebody is thoughtful of you.
The one story I always tell about that, Gary Vaynerchuk was one of the people that I watched all of his content when I was starting my business. And I learned everything about mindset through him. And he has this story about a guy, he used to have a wine company. A guy ordered 2 bottles of wine from him. He went on Facebook, found this guy was a huge Broncos fan. So he sent this guy the bottles of wine, also sent him a Broncos jersey, signed Broncos jersey by a player, and just said, hey, thank you so much for the wine order. We appreciate you. Didn't ask for anything in return. And the guy got it. The guy that received it didn't say a word. He didn't say anything. And Gary said, I was kind of like, what the hell, man? We went out of our way to do that. You didn't say thanks, no, nothing. And then he said,
it's like, did the jersey even make it?
Yeah. He said a year and a half later, another guy placed an order that ordered $2,500 worth of wine for an event. And he said, hey, I heard about you sending the Broncos jersey to my friend Rick. By the way, I'm a Jets fan. And he posted he made this huge order, $2,500 worth of wine. So it just goes to show that even though it's not, working or maybe doesn't look like it's working in the beginning, and not that you should be doing these things for something in return, it does help you build that relationship.
Of course.
Yeah. And then the last piece of advice I would give is to keep going even when it gets shitty. Because there's a lot of times when it's more so in the beginning, I'd say there's a lot of times when you're like, man, is this really worth it? You want to quit. You don't know if you can do it. But if you just get through those bad days, eventually you get to a point where it's just exponential growth.
So, the only way forward is through.
Exactly. I like that saying.
Man, you got to go for it. Easton Bennett, where can people find you? And we haven't even mentioned your other pretty rad podcast that you do with a couple of your old homies. So we should probably plug that while you're at it.
Yeah. So if you can find me, I guess, on this, if you want to reach out to this podcast, I'll see it here if you guys are avid listeners, or Bennett Creative Media. I think it's Bennett Creative Media on all platforms except Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. That's Bennett C Media. And you can find me on there, or Easton Bennett 2 on everything. If you're the real Easton Bennett that won't give me your handle, I have a bone to pick with you. And then, Three Dudes Podcast, me and a couple buddies each week come up with a topic. I think last week we did the Ice Age. So we talked about the Ice Age for an hour and a half. Yeah. So we just kind of shoot the shit there on that show for a little bit. But reach out to any of those platforms, BennettCreativeMedia.com if you want there. But this podcast, mainly if you're listening to this podcast, you probably can find me pretty quickly.
You know where this guy is. Well, Easton, once again, thanks for having me. It's so cool that I got to sit in this kind of chair again. It's been a long time since I've been able to do this. And this is kind of how I started as well, was interview-based podcasting. So folks, I've been your host, Jonah Lantto. You can find me at Midwest Murder. Cool. Thanks, Easton.
Jonah, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's weird being on the other side of the table, but thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, dude. Thank you.